This podcast episode contains strong language and adult content. It may not be suitable for young listeners or really anyone. Please use your judgment. Welcome to The Counselor and the Con. On today's episode, Iggy and I talked about gateway crimes.
I've heard of gateway drug, but what's a gateway crime?
We're going to get into that in this episode. We're also going to hear a little bit about Iggy's past and what it looked like at the time that he committed his first crime. And we'll hear about some interesting facts on juvenile crime as well.
Allegedly.
Allegedly. We hope you enjoy listening to it as much as we enjoyed recording it. The following is a true crime story. Names have been changed to protect those involved. The boy was born in London in 1960 to Irish immigrant parents. He was first arrested for stealing apples at age 14. He claims this first arrest did not sour his view of the police, but later that year he was arrested by the burglary squad. He was beaten, tortured until he confessed to a crime he did not commit. In his own words, the boy threw himself into crime, landing him in a detention center. By age 16, he was charged with armed robbery and sentenced to 3 years. While serving this sentence, he met the contacts that would lead to his lengthy career as a professional robber. He ultimately committed over 200 bank robberies and many other robbery sprees, resulting in him spending most of his adult life in prison. There, he taught himself to read and write and began his career as a well-known author. Noel Razor Smith is now reformed, but it all goes back to that first arrest for stealing apples, his gateway crime. Welcome to The Counselor and the Con, a true crime comedy podcast that goes off the record to bring together a former criminal turned comedian and a current lawyer turned crime enthusiast. We dip into stories from the world of crime and punishment, and it turns out we're friends.
Hey, we're homies.
Oh yeah, I'm counselor at law Cam Nichols.
And I'm former scumbag criminal turned comedian Iggy Samaniego.
On our show, I'm going to give Iggy a topic having to do with various criminal exploits, and he's going to share stories from his own past and those of others he knows. Today, as you heard from our story at the beginning of our episode, we're going to be talking about something called gateway crimes.
What does that mean, though? Like, I know what a gateway drug is, but what does this mean?
Right. So gateway crime is not a technical legal term. It is very similar to what you're describing about gateway drugs. The idea of a gateway drug is it's a drug that then leads you to take another drug that might be a more serious or a harsher drug later on. Gateway crime would be the same idea. It would be a lesser offense that one might commit early on in your career, but that would pave the way to more serious offenses as the career continued.
Oh, right on. I dig. So it might like, maybe it doesn't lead to it, but that's like where the door opened into.
Exactly.
I just said the same thing, but worded it different. All right.
Yeah. So it's the idea too is that, there's always that one moment, I think, or maybe I'm wrong and you can tell us this, but I think there's that moment where a person who's going to commit a crime has to make a decision to do so. And maybe it's a spur of the moment decision, maybe it's planned, but at some point, once you've made that decision, I get the sense that it gets easier to make that decision again. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I could attest to that because like my mom was a very God-fearing or beat the devil out of you type of mom, But I remember stealing $1 from her one time to go play Street Fighter in the arcade down the street. And it was a big thing. I was scared. I was so scared that she was going to catch me. And fortunately, she didn't. But after that, I was like, well, maybe another $1 here and there, And I felt guilty, but I still did it. But it took that one time of doing it and going, she didn't catch me. She didn't whip my ass. And it just kind of, that might have been my gateway. I don't know.
Let's talk a little bit about like where you grew up and how it was for you growing up. Because I know that you've mentioned it before as part of kind of what molded you and what led to some of the early crimes that you committed. So start back, kind of give us your history a little bit.
Yeah. And before I do, or as I do, the intro story you had about the Irish kid.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you think he wasn't stealing an apple because I'm assuming he's not stealing an apple because he's rich and he had a shitload of apples and he was bored. He was probably hungry and stole a damn apple and then he got framed for stuff and it's just it snowballed. But you see, like my dad was a cop. My dad was a motorcycle cop in Mexico. But he got fired for it, and then after that became basically like a heist man, But in the last episode, did I tell you why he got fired?
Yes, you told us that story in episode 2 when we talked about robberies of financial institutions.
Yeah, so he got fired for doing basically the right thing, not arrest. He arrested the mayor's son, whatever, of where we lived.
So, Iggy, my question for you is if you could please tell us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up before you ever committed a crime, because I think that it would be really interesting for me and for our listeners to hear about what that was like. I get that sense that there is a lot in the way that you grew up and your surroundings that may have led to your later career as a criminal.
Yeah, I think so because I grew up in the late 80s in a border town, and back then, like, you think it's bad now to be a Mexican. Back then it was worse. You know what I'm saying? So we're coming from this other country. We're getting shit from everyone. We got shit from the students. I'm talking about in elementary school when I came here when I was 3. I'm getting shit from the students, from other Mexican kids, from the teachers, the principals, calling us racial slurs, you know? And so I was a regular kid. My mom loved me. My dad wasn't there, but I still had this thing, you know? Because my first crime I committed was pretty much out of hate. Yeah, and not to be racist, but my neighbor was a white kid with a white family. They moved into our apartments, and I broke into his house and I stole his Game Boy and shit. But I remember distinctly going, well, to hell with him. They don't like us. Well, I don't like you either. But that hate was not in me. It just wasn't. It was just in growing up and feeling that. Which, by the way, that dude became my homie. He became my homie and my like really good homie, partner in crime later on. But I just feel, as I get older, I look back at all this shit and I feel that's kind of where it stemmed from too. You know, I was minding my own business. I was just a little kid getting my ass kicked just because I was brown. And when the opportunity came to, I guess, strike back, I did.
Did that particular family, the one that you stole the Game Boy from, did they ever do anything directly to you that you felt was racist or inappropriate?
Not at all. They were the nicest people. Yeah. And I fucked up. I fucked up. They became friends and everything.
So it wasn't like you weren't targeting them because, like, in revenge for something they did to you. You were just kind of feeling frustrated by the whole difference between the races in general.
Yeah. And again, like getting my ass kicked, I probably had like CT by the time I was like 10. So many fights. And the weird part is my mom taught, I gotta give it to my mom, man. Shout out to my mom, because I treated that white family like shit just that one time, right? And then we ended up being friends. But that kid ended up running away, and the parents didn't care. They didn't go look for him, nothing like that. But my mom would feed this kid. My mom would give us socks to take to him. You mean, so my mom taught me to fight that shit. You mean, fight that bat with good. She couldn't beat the stupid out of me, but she beat the racist out of me.
So even before you stole the Game Boy from this family, though, you said you were getting into fights. What were you getting into fights about?
No. I was getting my ass kicked.
Oh, that's different.
Yeah. Yeah, I would just be walking down the hallway and, hey, wetback. And I didn't know what a wetback was. I was like, okay, they gave me a nickname. But yeah, and they would just come behind you and smack you. And then we'd go to the principal's office. And then we would get in trouble. So finally, my mom had enough, because my mom always told us, it was like Medusa. She goes, just don't make eye contact with white people. Leave them alone. Don't let them know that, you know what I mean? Just don't fuck with them. Or even the authority. She always instilled that in us. But she would go, really? Like 3 fights in 1 week? I go, Mom, like, I'm not fighting, man. I'm getting my ass kicked. Yeah, and finally she told you, well, if they're going to listen to you, they're not going to believe you, then you got to stand up for yourself. And that's when I started getting into a gang too, man. I was going to talk about that, because join a gang, you don't join a gang and don't commit crimes. But you don't join a gang because you got your shit straight. You know, I kind of did it for protection. I was scared. So I go, hey, man, you get your ass kicked too, I get my ass kicked too. What about we join forces? And then from there, we get to middle school and they start doing the drugs. And then you need money for drugs, but you can't work. And then you steal shit.
So how old were you when you first started, like, being part of a gang where you were, like, helping protect each other?
It was right out of elementary going into middle school.
Wow.
Yeah. So shit, what is that? 13, 12-ish? Yeah. And before that, I mean, we're kind of not a gang, but the cats that lived in my streets, when we went to school, we just band together to, you know what I mean?
So
defend ourselves. Yeah.
So it wasn't like you were joining an existing gang. It was more like you got together a group of people and formed a gang. Or did you have experience with other gangs to, like, that you were modeling it after? How did you make all that happen?
No, I think that there was this dude that moved in to our neighborhood from a different one, and he had experience with the gangs. He was older, so he kind of just follow their lead. You know what I'm saying? Because we already knew we were gonna go that way. It's just none of us had been in one, so we didn't know what a gang was and shit. You know, we're all goofy little peewees.
As you look back on it now, do you think that there was anything that you could have done differently?
I don't know. I wish I knew, and I wish I had. But again, because I'm not making excuses, man. I don't want to seem like, oh, woe is me. There's people that I grew up with in the hood I grew up with that didn't follow a life of crime. But I also saw them being victimized and being fucked with, and so maybe I could have. I was gonna say my sister turned out pretty okay, but no, she's kind of messed up too.
Well, tell us about that, because how many brothers and sisters do you have?
13.
What?
No. No, I have 5. One brother, one sister, and 4 brothers.
And were all of you living together in that apartment when you were little?
All in a 1-bedroom apartment, girl.
Oh my jeez. Tell me about that.
It was great. We bonded a lot.
Was it like quarantine?
With more ass whoopings.
And what ages were your siblings, or like how far apart were you in age from them? Like who was older or younger or whatever?
Well, my older brothers grew up in Juarez in Mexico. My second oldest brother and my sister grew up on the American side. So my older brothers of the 5, they saw a lot of shit, man. They saw a lot of shit. We over here didn't, but we experienced like they saw a lot of crime and fucked up shit happen and corruption in Mexico. And over here we saw discrimination. You know what I mean? So my brothers didn't go being discriminated against. They were in their country. We grew up here being fucked with, and so that was different. And so that was different. And they didn't gravitate towards like crimes and gangs and shit, and we did. So there's a correlation there somewhere.
You were telling us last week about your dad becoming a robber at some point, that he stole from financial institutions. But when you were little, was there anyone else in your family who you knew of that had a criminal history?
No, it was very frowned upon. I'll tell you, like my mom was a Bible thumper, and like very old school Mexican. Like even if you smoked weed, which is not really a big thing, they'll call you a marihuano. It was like a big stigma on being a fuck up. We came from a hardworking family. You work your ass off for what you get. So that type of shit was frowned upon. I still gravitated towards, and I still did it, but no, it was very frowned upon.
So Iggy and I have been talking about his family and his living circumstances when he was a little kid, because I was really interested in the environment that led to his first crime. And that's really what our topic is today, is gateway crimes. Like, what is it that someone does that is their first, violation of the law that maybe leads them to future crimes as well. And Iggy mentioned his first crime where he stole the Game Boy from the neighbor. We'll talk more about that and about other juvenile crimes when we come back from our break.
Hey there, friends and pals. If you want to catch more of The Counselor and the Con, sign up at thecounselorandthecon.com and look us up at the Border Geek Podcast Network on Facebook. This is God.
And we're back. We've been talking about gateway crimes, that first crime that someone commits that maybe leads them to committing further crimes in the future. And before the break, Iggy was telling us about his gateway crime. Tell me exactly, how did you go about stealing the Game Boy from your neighbors?
I saw him with it. They had just moved in. So no one talked to him because, again, we don't make eye contact with white people. So we just kind of...
I see white people.
I'm looking at you now, but I see you through your window. No, but... it was weird because I was like 8 years old and I was very quiet about myself, but I was scoping this family's apartment out. And when they left one day, I had timed it, went in through the restroom window, and I just went straight for the Game Boy. I didn't look through the drawers. I didn't steal money or nothing, just the fucking Game Boy, and I got out.
So you remember in episode 1 when we talked about casing, you were already casing joints at age 8?
Yeah, straight out, man. And did I mention I got caught for that one? That was the first time I got caught, just not charged. But
how did you get caught?
Oh man, I learned the lesson from that one. Cause I went in through the restroom, got the Game Boy, and so I didn't ransack the place. Right, all I was missing was a Game Boy. But like an hour after I did it, I was playing the Game Boy in my apartment, and the neighbor's mom came, and she just said to my mom, "Can I see your son's shoes?" But my mom didn't speak English, so I'm like, cool, man. My mom's not gonna know what's up. And why does this lady want to see my shoes, first of all? And my mom tells the lady, I don't speak English. The lady was part Mexican. She goes, oh, déjame mirar el zapato de ti hijo. I go, fuck, man. But I still didn't know why she wanted to look at my shoes. And I had already tucked the Game Boy under the couch. I'm like, I'm fine. They're not going to know. And I showed her my shoes. She goes, yeah, that's the footprint on the bathtub in our apartment. I fucking stepped on the goddamn bathtub. And it was funny. Out of all the houses I broke into after that, every time I went through the restroom, I always extended my feet outside of the bathtub from that one moment. Yeah.
I'm surprised you didn't put like plastic over your shoes every time from then on.
Such as I went head first.
So what then happened? Were you charged with the stealing of the Game Boy, or was it more something that was worked out between your families?
I wish I would have gotten charged for that, because the fear my mom put into me was way scarier than any judge could have done. She made me apologize to a lady, and it was just like the most embarrassing. I felt like I let my mom down. You know, they looked so much down on fucking crimes and criminals, and here I was at 8. You know what I mean, breaking her heart like that.
Already going down that road. It's actually interesting. You know, we talk about this in terms of it being a crime, but actually most of the time when there's a proceeding against a juvenile for something that they've done that would be a crime, it's considered a civil matter. It doesn't take place in the same criminal courts where adults go. They have special juvenile courts that, and what they're adjudicating is delinquency. That's what is being decided by the courts.
So they're pinning it on the parents. Yeah, like, you're paying for this shit.
There is an element of restitution, that like paying somebody back for what's been done to them, but mostly it's because there's not the same rights that attach in the juvenile court, and there is still this idea in the juvenile courts, even when you're talking about a quote unquote delinquent child, that the court should still act in that child's best interest. So it's intended to try to focus more on the rehabilitative side than on the punitive side. Whereas I think in adult courts, you know, there's both are there, but we focus a lot more on the punitive side than the rehabilitative side.
And I think that's important, man, because it's important to treat it that way, I think, because the biggest gateway into a life of crime is entering the criminal justice system. You're in, it's fucking hard to get out. And
yeah, and so many people who get into the system, like you were saying, do so on a pretty minor issue. Like 75%, this is what I read, 75% of those who go on to commit later crimes, their first crime was some sort of stealing. Like, it could be, you know, petty theft. It could be shoplifting. It could be something like that. And then later they went on to do, you know, again, progressively more serious crimes, or stealing more things, or stealing bigger things. All of that, you know, kind of seems to snowball from just this, what could be a very minor offense.
And I didn't mean to deviate from, I guess, the gateway crime itself, but I'm thinking also like the mitigating factors of what got you to snap and do that first fuck up, and then it just went from there. You know what I'm saying? Like, because you could be like a law-abiding citizen, all of a sudden something happens and you just snap.
Yeah, absolutely. That could be the thing that triggers a gateway crime, or you know, it could be something like what you were saying too, where you saw something that your neighbor had, you were ticked off at white people in general, and you went and got it.
For the let the record reflect, now I love white people. I love them.
We're so glad to hear it.
They employ me. They help me.
So there are situations, though, where juveniles are tried in adult courts, and there can be both pros and cons to that. You were talking about how scary it was to have your mom come down on you, but and you were saying she was doing worse than any judge would do. But I don't know if you'd been faced with an adult court judge at that point, if that would have really been the case.
Probably not.
But they still don't do it that often. I mean, we hear about it on the news because it's those big, like, flashy issues where there's been a kid who's committed a very serious offense where they're tried as an adult, but really it doesn't happen nearly as much as you would maybe think from the media.
I just remember, I went to when I was in middle school, there was these two twins. They were gangbangers, but they were twins, and either both or one of them, I can't remember, but they killed their stepdad, like murdered their stepdad, and like everyone in the school knew, whatever. They're just
wow.
Yeah, these
How
kids,
old were they?
They were 1 year older than me at the time, so if I was 13, they were 14. But these cats had like, and they didn't have a swagger like they were showing off. They killed someone and didn't. I think he was beating the mom. It was one of those where, not saying it was justified, but they didn't do time for it. They just murdered someone and were walking around.
Oh, wow. So when we talk about juveniles versus adults, typically the age cutoff is 17 and under is a juvenile, 18 and up is an adult. Right. But that can be kind of tweaked depending on the law of a particular state.
You should have told that to the judge in my first DWI I was 17. I got charged as an adult. Yeah.
Well, yeah, so you have to at least be 16 most of the time in order to get a waiver to an adult court. That's what it's called, is a waiver. But it just depends on, again, where you are and what the crime itself is. So if it's something really serious like those, like a murder, then it's more likely to go into the adult court than if it's a lesser offense.
And the punishment still kind of the same, even if they're...
Once you're into the adult court, you're getting adult punishment. But you have some rights that you wouldn't have in the juvenile court. So that's one reason why I said there's pros and cons. There are some reasons that it's good to be in the adult court for a serious crime like that. For example, in juvenile court, there's no right to a trial by jury. But in adult court, there obviously is. So that can be that may be something that would be helpful to the person who's been charged. Both places you have a right to an attorney. It's just a jury wouldn't decide it necessarily.
Why not a jury with teens? Is it because like your peers would have to get teens to be in the jury?
You know what? That's funny, but probably no. I think it goes more to the fact that the court is still charged with the best interest of the child, and we can't necessarily leave that up to a jury. Best interest of the child is a different standard, and so that's I think anyway. And I really don't know entirely why that would be the case.
Did you see that was not the case with that one judge? I think it was in Pennsylvania. I'm not sure. It might have been Texas. That's totally two different places, but
they're kind of far away.
No, yeah, but this damn judge was sentencing juveniles, even though if they were innocent, whatever, to long sentences, because he was getting like a kickback from the facility, something like that. But this judge was, yeah.
Oh, so like the detention center where the kids were being sent would pay the judge for kids going there?
Yeah, for sending warm bodies, yeah.
Oh, wow. And you know what? That's too bad too, because like if you have, as a juvenile, if you have a longer record, or you've been punished more, or that like your past rehabilitation hasn't been as successful, which like a long type of sentence in a detention center would kind of suggest, then you're more likely to be charged as an adult the next time around.
Yeah. Yeah, and then that's it. That's why I said once you're in the criminal justice system, and even if you, probably even worse if you start off as a kid. When I was in the juvenile detention center, there was this kid, Petey, and this poor kid got shot point blank with a shotgun, and he got stabbed like two other occasions. But this kid was 10 years old, and he was already in the system. This didn't give a shit. They didn't give a shit about him either. But I'm saying, like, let's say he did commit a crime. The judge doesn't take it into consideration. Fucking child got shot.
Wow.
And maybe he's acting up because he got fucking shot. Yeah, but no, that kid probably didn't make it out of there.
In the cases where there's a juvenile offender and they do actually kind of turn things around, and as an adult, they don't get charged again with a crime, there is something else that they can do, though. We have this theory, of expungement, where you can go back and say, okay, the court basically orders that they can tell their landlords and licensing agencies and others that they've never been arrested or convicted at all. It can also, the court record can be sealed, and that's very common with juvenile records as well. But it's not always automatic, and I think that's a common misconception. So sometimes it's something that you have to go through an actual legal process to have done once you're an adult. And it doesn't go away entirely. So even if you get your record expunged, by the way, there's still like certain people who can access it. For example, like insurance companies can sometimes get to it and charge you more. And also, like even if your conviction was expunged, it can sometimes qualify under some states like multiple strikes rules. So if like a state has a 3 strikes rule, sometimes they can reach back into a sealed or expunged record to get that.
Damn, that sucks.
Yeah, it's not it's typically not going to happen as much with a juvenile conviction, but like I said, there is some precedent out there for it happening.
That was good news, and bad news.
Even worse news. Yeah, and I mean, it does. I think it follows you in some way, shape, or form, kind of indefinitely. There's no way to entirely get away from it.
Yeah, and let's say you messed up. Let's say I broke into a house, I messed up, I realized I messed up, but now I'm in the system, and then they dick me over with all this stuff. Now I can't get a job, and maybe I want to work a honest job, but I can't because I got this stigma on me. I probably will reoffend, man. The recidivism rate is just going to be there.
Before we go, I will share with you a piece of good news about juvenile crime. How's that?
Right on.
Like we'll end on a happier note.
Are you going to tell me that my juvenile record got expunged? Yes.
No. Merry Christmas. No, I was going to tell you that the rate of incarceration where juveniles are sent to these detention centers is going down in most states. At least between like 2015 and 2017, the rate increased in only about like less than 10 states. And so that's good news. That means we are finding other ways to address juvenile crime other than just sending them off to, juvenile jail, so to speak.
That's interesting you say that because I went to go do not a speech, man. We'll talk to this alternative class in my old middle school. And I set it up with everything with the teacher and he goes, yeah, come down. And I get to the middle school, I go, so where's the alternative class? Because it was a separate building, a separate portable building. And he goes, we got rid of it. I go, then who I'm going to talk to? He goes, just regular kids. There was no alternative program. He goes, there's been no kids that have messed up like that. So we got rid of the program. So that's cool. What you need me for, man? I didn't talk to regular kids. I want to talk to the fuck-ups. But yeah, they had gotten rid of that program because, there's just, I guess, I don't know, if it was a gang thing. There's other ways of fucking up other than gangs, but...
Well, maybe you're talking to the kids who weren't in an alternative learning program, help them not have to create a new one.
That's what I told my life story, go, do the opposite of me. You'll succeed.
So we started out our episode today talking about gateway crimes with the story of a boy in the 60s who stole some apples and then ended up basically becoming a bank robber with 200 robberies under his belt. And then Iggy, you told us about what it was like growing up as an immigrant in a border town and how that kind of led to your first gateway crime of stealing a Game Boy. Were there any other crimes that you that really stand out to you as being like early in your, let's call it your criminal career, that you think were brought about by the circumstances you were living in, where it was like, I probably wouldn't have done this except for it was really shitty.
Yeah. And in that elementary school where I told you the principal, you would hear the principal calling students wetbacks. The principal. So I remember one time there was these balls, like those, like dodgeball balls. Mm-hmm. And I saw him and there was a gate that was unlocked. Normally it was locked, it was unlocked. And I remember we stole a couple to take home with us. But I remember thinking, well, they don't care about us anyway, so fuck it. It was like this little fucking moment. And I was like 6, 7. But I remember thinking, my mom's gonna beat my ass if I do this. But also something said, fuck it. And I wasn't that type of kid, it was just the environment of being in that hostile school and going, well, if no one cares, then I don't fucking care either. Yeah, and that spilled over for a lot of years, and it was not, that might have been the gateway. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that shit out.
Well, I think that's a really tough one too. Like, how do we tease apart all of those different issues? Because you were faced with a ton of stuff, and Iggy's been really gracious about sharing a lot of info with us today about himself and going back to your past. So we appreciate that for sure, and I know I do. So with that, that's our show for today.
Stay away from the legal justice system. Don't steal shit.
Keep away from the silver handcuffs, and we'll see you next crime. I am still a lawyer, so of course I have to give a small disclaimer. I am a practicing attorney, but I am not your attorney. This show is not intended to give you legal advice, and it's not intended to be attorney advertising of any kind. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to The Counselor and the Con on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or whatever platform you're using. Source information from today's show is in our show notes. You can also follow us on Facebook at Counselor and Con, and on Instagram at The Counselor and the Con.
And this will be the only time that I encourage people to do creepy shit. Follow us on social media, DM us, tell your friends about us, just help us spread the word. Also, if you have a crime story that you would like for us to showcase on the show, send us what we call a kite to cam. You could either email us at counselorandcon@gmail.com, or like I said, DM us. You could also visit the website at
counselorandcon.com. It's a little bit of a tongue twister.
No, it's just brain damage, girl.
This has been a production of Dangerous Minds, LLC. Thanks to our technical producer and fellow homie, Nico Ajimian. We are distributed by Border Geeks Podcast Network with executive producer Jib